Welcome back to Capital Catch-Up. We are diving straight into a heavy slate of legislative action that touches on everything from the digital infrastructure in your pocket to the physical pipes running under your streets.
That's right, Victor. And we're seeing a fascinating trend in the House right now regarding administrative modernization. We have a pair of bills, H.R. 1588, the Facilitating Digital Applications Act, and H.R. 1665, the Digital Applications Act. While the titles sound similar, they represent a concerted push to force federal agencies to accept electronic submissions.
It sounds mundane, but think about the bottleneck. For decades, certain permitting processes have relied on paper trails that slow infrastructure projects to a crawl. This ties directly into H.R. 1731, the Standard Fees Act. This legislation aims to harmonize the fee structures across agencies. The implication for the average American is potentially faster groundbreaking on construction and energy projects, which brings us to the energy sector.
Exactly. We're looking at H.R. 4758, the Homeowner Energy Freedom Act. This appears to be a legislative response to recent regulatory shifts, aiming to repeal mandates that critics argue limit consumer choice in home appliances. It's part of a broader philosophical debate we've seen play out in the H.R. 4690, the Reliable Federal Infrastructure Act. The House is essentially trying to codify how infrastructure projects are prioritized, emphasizing reliability over what some members call ideological criteria.
Speaking of infrastructure reliability, we have to talk about H.R. 261, the Undersea Cable Protection Act of 2025. This is critical. Roughly 99% of international data traffic travels through undersea cables. Historically, we've worried about accidental damage from fishing trawlers, but this bill addresses the national security aspect, preventing foreign adversaries from compromising these lifelines.
It's a modern vulnerability that didn't exist 50 years ago. But moving to very local concerns, I want to highlight H.R. 7204, the School Bus Stop Arm Safety Camera Act. This is a federal push to help municipalities install cameras to catch drivers who illegally pass stop school buses. It's a safety issue that every parent understands, and it's interesting to see the federal government step in with grant money for what is usually a local enforcement issue.
On the Senate side, we are seeing a significant focus on health and equity. S. 3690, the Ensuring Access to Medicaid Buy-in Programs Act of 2026, is on the table. This builds on efforts from the Affordable Care era, allowing states more flexibility to let individuals buy into Medicaid, even if they earn slightly above the poverty line.
That is paired with S. 3692, the Prevent Diabetes Act, and S. 3691, the Commission on Equity and Reconciliation and the Uniform Services Act. That last one is historic. It's looking to establish a formal body to investigate historical discrimination within the military. It's a move towards restorative justice that veteran advocacy groups have been demanding for years.
Which is a perfect segue to the committee schedules, because the House Committee on Veterans Affairs is incredibly active this week. They are marking up H.R. 6047, the Sherry Briley and Eric Edmondson Veterans Benefits Expansion Act, alongside the Fisher House Availability Act.
Victor, for our listeners who might not know the term, could you quickly explain what a markup actually is? We see it on the schedule for February 10th and 11th.
Sure. A markup is the step where a committee literally debates, amends, and rewrites a bill before sending it to the full floor for a vote. It's where the real legislative sausage is made. If you want to know what a bill will actually do, don't look at the introduction text. Look at what comes out of the markup.
And one of the most contentious markups coming up is regarding S. 1383, the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, or the SAVE Act. This is a bicameral effort, we see it in the House and Senate, to mandate proof of citizenship for voter registration.
This is a flashpoint. Proponents argue it secures the sanctity of the ballot box, while opponents argue it creates unnecessary hurdles for legitimate voters who may not have ready access to birth certificates or passports. The Committee on House Administration has this scheduled for a markup on February 10th, and we expect fireworks.
On the topic of elections, we have a key nomination to watch. Ashley Stowe of Texas has been nominated to be a member of the Federal Election Commission. The FEC has often been deadlocked in recent years due to its even partisan split. A new commissioner can sometimes break those logjams or entrench them depending on the appointee's philosophy.
We also have nominations for Scott Socha to direct the National Park Service and Karen Sessions for the Consumer Product Safety Commission. But I want to pivot to the foreign policy docket. The Committee on Foreign Affairs is holding a hearing titled Lies, Lawfare, and Leverage, the CCP's gaslighting and manipulation to marginalize Taiwan.
The language in that hearing title is unusually aggressive. It suggests the committee is looking to take a much harder line on Beijing's diplomatic pressure campaigns. This coincides with a hearing on South Asia policy and the nomination of Todd Stegerda as representative to the UN in Geneva. It's a full-court press on diplomatic engagement.
And we can't ignore the oversight side. The Committee on Oversight and Accountability is holding a hearing on potential DHS shutdown impacts. We are seeing a recurring theme here, using committee time to highlight the risks of funding lapses. This isn't just political theater. They are examining the operational breakdown of border security and disaster response if the money stops flowing.
And in the weeds of the Education and the Workforce Committee, they're looking at H.R. 1319, the Modern Worker Empowerment Act. This attempts to redefine the distinction between an employee and an independent contractor. This is the legislative front of the gig economy battle.
Before we wrap up, we should mention the specific water infrastructure bills, H.R. 7287 regarding the Lewis and Clark Regional Water System and H.R. 7288 for Western South Dakota. These are feasibility studies, which are the precursors to massive civil engineering projects.
And finally, a nod to H.R. 5616, the 2.50 for America's 250th Act. With the semi-quincentennial coming up, this bill adjusts coinage or funding mechanisms to support the celebration. It's a small cultural note amidst all the heavy policy.
So what should you watch for in the coming days? Keep an eye on the congressional record, specifically volumes 172, numbers 28 and 29. The text of the amendments from the markup sessions we mentioned will appear there first.
Specifically, watch the amendments on the SAVE Act, S. 1383. That is where the political fault lines for the next election cycle are being drawn right now.
That's it for this edition of Capital Catch-Up. Stay engaged.